A 71-year-old woman was freezing on a hospital bench at 3 a.m., 28 degrees, January. Her breath came out white. She had a thin blanket from a donation bin, shoes with holes at the toes, and nothing else. 4 floors above her, her 6-year-old granddaughter lay in the pediatric ICU connected to a ventilator. The hospital wouldn't let the grandmother inside. No ID, no insurance, no permanent address. To them, she was an unauthorized visitor. Then a doctor stepped outside at 3 a.m., saw her on that bench, and nearly called security. But he looked down at what she was holding in her arms, and everything changed. It was a notebook. That was what she was holding. Not a bag of belongings, not a bottle, not the scattered possessions of someone living on the street with nowhere to go. It was a small composition notebook, the kind you buy at a dollar store for 99 cents, with a black and white marbled cover and a cracked spine from being opened too many times. Dr. Marcus Calloway almost walked past her. He almost went back inside, called security, and let the system do what the system always does with people who sleep on hospital benches at 3 in the morning. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the way she was sitting. Not slumped, not sprawled. She was sitting upright, back straight, the notebook clutched against her chest like it was the most valuable thing she owned. Because it was. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need medical attention?" Beverly Williams looked up at him with eyes that were exhausted but sharp, clear. The eyes of someone who was fully aware of exactly where she was and exactly why she was there. "I am fine. Is my granddaughter okay?" Room 412, Destiny Williams. Marcus paused. He knew room 412. 6-year-old girl, acute myocarditis. Been in the pediatric ICU for weeks. The chart listed no emergency contact, no family on file. The nurses had noted that the child sometimes cried for her grandmother at night, but no one had ever come during visiting hours to claim her. And here was the grandmother, not inside the hospital, outside it, in January. At 3 in the morning. "How long have you been out here?" Beverly looked at him the way you look at someone when the answer is too heavy to say quickly. 47 days. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. He looked at the notebook in her hands. "May I?" Beverly hesitated. Then she handed it to him. Her fingers were stiff from the cold, the knuckles swollen, the skin cracked and dry. These were not the hands of someone who had given up. These were the hands of someone who had been holding on too hard for too long. He opened the first page. The handwriting was shaky but deliberate. Every letter formed with care, the way someone writes when they know the words matter. Day 1, temperature 102.4. They gave her something through the IV. She cried when they put the needle in. The nurse with the short hair was kind to her. He turned the page. Day 2, temperature 101.8. She asked for me. They told her I would come during visiting hours. I came at 7 a.m. They let me stay 1 hour. Page after page, 47 of them. Each one a record of her granddaughter's condition gathered from fragments. A question asked to a nurse through a closing door. A glimpse through the ICU window. A detail overheard from a shift change conversation in the hallway. Beverly had built an entire medical log from the outside of a building she was not allowed to enter. Some entries were clinical. Oxygen level, 94%. New medication started. Moved to different monitor. Some were personal, in a way that made Marcus's throat tighten. Day 23. She smiled today. First time in 3 weeks. Day 31. She drew a picture of our old apartment. She put me in the window. Day 40. She asked if I forgot about her. I need to find a way to get inside. The ink on several pages was smeared. Water damage. Marcus looked at the bench, looked at the open sky above it, and understood. It had rained 6 times in the last 47 days. Beverly had sat through every storm. Here is what most people do not know about hospitals in America. The ICU has rules: visiting hours, identification requirements, insurance verification. These policies exist for good reasons: security, patient safety, infection control. But they also create invisible walls that keep certain people out. People without a permanent address. People without government-issued ID. People whose relationship to a patient cannot be confirmed through a database. Beverly Williams was Destiny's grandmother. She had raised that child since she was 2 years old. She was the only family Destiny had ever known. But the system could not see that. The system saw an unverified visitor with no documentation. And so, the system put a glass door between a grandmother and her dying grandchild and told Beverly to come back during approved hours with proper identification. Beverly came back every single day. She just never left. Marcus closed the notebook. He looked at Beverly. She was watching him with an expression he recognized. It was the look of someone waiting to be dismissed. Someone who had learned that people in authority usually said no, and the best you could do was ask politely and accept whatever answer came. He handed the notebook back. 47 days, he said quietly. You have been out here for 47 days. She is my granddaughter. Beverly said it simply. Like it explained everything. And it did. Beverly Williams had not chosen to be homeless. She had not chosen to lose her husband, her home, her savings. She had not chosen for her daughter to disappear into addiction or for her granddaughter to get sick. But she had chosen one thing every single day for 47 days. She had chosen to stay. To understand how Beverly ended up on that bench, you have to go back, not to the hospital, not even to the shelter. You have to go back 34 years to a classroom in West Baltimore, where a young woman named Beverly Turner, before she became Beverly Williams, stood in front of 23 four-year-olds on her first day as a preschool teacher. She was 22. She had just graduated from Coppin State with a degree in early childhood education and a belief deep and unshakable that every child deserved someone who showed up for them, not just sometimes, every day. That belief did not come from a textbook. It came from her own grandmother, Mama Lorraine, who had raised Beverly after her mother left. Mama Lorraine cleaned office buildings at night and braided hair on weekends, and never once let Beverly go to school without a pressed uniform and a packed lunch, even when the lunch was nothing more than a biscuit and a piece of fruit. You do not let a child see the struggle, Mama Lorraine used to say. You let a child see the love. Beverly carried that into every classroom she ever taught. For 34 years at Garrison Elementary, she was the teacher who stayed late, who learned every child's name by the second day, who kept a drawer full of clean socks and granola bars for the kids who came to school without breakfast. She married Raymond Williams when she was 28. A good man, quiet, worked for the city, drove a sanitation truck for 26 years. They bought a small row house on Reisterstown Road. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a narrow backyard, a kitchen where Beverly cooked Sunday dinner for whoever needed a plate. They had one daughter, Shanice, and Shanice broke their hearts. It started in high school. Painkillers after a sports injury. Then something stronger. Then something that swallowed her whole. Beverly and Raymond tried everything. Rehab 3 times. Family counseling. Tough love. Soft love. Prayer. Nothing held. Shanice would get clean for 6 months, relapse, disappear, come back thinner and harder, disappear again. When Destiny was born, Shanice was 23 and already too far gone to hold a baby steady. Beverly was in the delivery room. She cut the cord. She took Destiny home from the hospital 2 days later and never brought her back. Shanice signed informal custody papers. Not legal guardianship. Just a handwritten agreement notarized at a check-cashing store that said Beverly would care for Destiny until Shanice got better. Shanice never got better. Then Raymond got sick. Lung cancer. Stage 3 by the time they caught it. 8 months of chemotherapy. 3 surgeries. Raymond died on a Tuesday morning in October, holding Beverly's hand, whispering that he was sorry for leaving her with so much to carry. The hospital bills came to $187,000. Even with Medicare, even with the supplemental insurance, the out-of-pocket costs consumed everything. The savings account, the emergency fund, the small life insurance policy that was supposed to be Beverly's safety net. Beverly's teacher pension from the state of Maryland was $1,400 a month. Rent on the row house was $1,100. That left $300 for food, utilities, medicine, bus fare, Destiny's school supplies, and the minimum payments on medical debt that grew faster than she could touch it. She held on for 3 years. Cut everything she could. Stopped buying meat. Stopped turning on the heat until it dropped below 40 degrees. Wore the same 3 outfits in rotation. But $1,400 cannot cover the cost of staying alive in America when the system has already decided how much your survival is worth. The eviction notice came 6 months before Destiny got sick. Beverly packed their belongings into 13 garbage bags and a rolling suitcase with a broken wheel. She and Destiny moved into her car, a 2008 Honda Civic, with 231,000 miles on it. They lived in that car for 2 months, parking in church lots, using the bathroom at the public library, washing up in gas station sinks. When the car broke down and she could not afford to fix it, they went to a shelter. The shelter gave them a bed for 90 days. Then, the 90 days ran out, and the waiting list for permanent housing was 14 months long, and Beverly was running out of places to go. But through all of it, every single day she made sure of one thing. Destiny's hair was braided. Her clothes were clean. Her homework was done. She carried a box of crayons everywhere she went because Destiny loved to draw, and Beverly believed that a child who could still draw was a child who still had hope. A social worker once asked Beverly why she did not put Destiny into foster care. "Just temporarily," the woman said. "Just until you get back on your feet." Beverly looked at her with 34 years of teaching in her eyes and said the words she would carry for the rest of her life. A child does not need to know she is poor. She just needs to know she is loved. Destiny Williams was 6 years old, and she liked 3 things more than anything in the world: drawing, butterflies, and her grandmother. She had her grandmother's wide smile and her mother's sharp cheekbones and a laugh that sounded too big for her small body. She was the kind of child who talked to strangers in grocery stores, who named every stray cat she saw, who asked questions that no adult could answer, like where does the sky stop and why do people cry when they are happy. She did not know she was homeless. Beverly had made sure of that. To Destiny, they were on an adventure. The shelter was a hotel. The car had been a camping trip. The backpack with all her clothes in it was just what you carried when you were an explorer. Beverly had turned poverty into a game so her granddaughter would never feel the weight of it. But the body does not play games, and Destiny's body had been trying to tell them something for weeks before anyone noticed. It started with tiredness. Destiny, who never sat still, who ran circles around the shelter common room until the other residents complained, suddenly wanted to sit down after walking half a block. Beverly noticed. She always noticed. But she told herself it was the stress, the disruption, the fact that the child had been sleeping in too many different beds in too many different places. Then came the shortness of breath. Destiny would climb the shelter stairs and stop on the landing, hands on her knees, panting, her lips tinged with a blue-gray color that Beverly had never seen before. Then the fall. They were in the shelter's common room on a Thursday afternoon. Destiny was coloring at a table. She stood up to show Beverly. Her drawing took 2 steps and collapsed, just dropped, like someone had pulled the ground out from under her. Her breathing was rapid and shallow. Her skin was gray. Her small hands were ice cold. Beverly did not scream. She did not panic. She dropped to the floor, put Destiny's head in her lap, and called 911 with the calm voice of a woman who had spent 34 years being the adult in the room when everyone else fell apart. The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. They took Destiny to Manhattan Children's Hospital, sirens cutting through the afternoon traffic, and Beverly sat in the back holding her granddaughter's hand, whispering the same thing over and over. "Grandma is here. Grandma is right here. You are going to be just fine." At the hospital, everything moved fast. Too fast. Destiny was wheeled into the emergency department. Doctors surrounded her. Words Beverly did not fully understand flew back and forth. Acute myocarditis, ventricular dysfunction, ejection fraction critically low. What Beverly understood was this: her granddaughter's heart was inflamed. It was not pumping blood the way it should. The virus Destiny had caught 3 weeks ago, the one Beverly thought was just a cold, had attacked the muscle of her heart. And now that heart was failing. Destiny was moved to the pediatric ICU, room 412. They connected her to a ventilator, a heart monitor, an IV drip. Machines beeped. Lines ran from her small body to screens that showed numbers Beverly could not read, but watched anyway as if staring hard enough might keep them in a safe range. Myocarditis in children is rare but real. It can follow an ordinary viral infection, a common cold, a stomach bug. The virus settles into the heart muscle, triggers inflammation, and in severe cases, the heart swells so much it can no longer pump effectively. Most children recover with medication and time. Some need mechanical support. A few need new hearts entirely. Destiny was somewhere between the second and third category, and the doctors would not know which way it would go for weeks. Beverly followed the gurney through the ICU doors. She was right behind it, close enough to touch the railing of Destiny's bed, close enough to hear Destiny whimpering through the oxygen mask. Then a hand stopped her. "Ma'am, I need to see your identification and insurance information." Beverly reached into her bag. She had Destiny's Medicaid card. The child had been enrolled through the emergency program at the shelter. But when the registration clerk asked for Beverly's own ID, her own address, her own proof of legal relationship to the patient, Beverly had nothing the system could verify. No current government ID. Her old Maryland license had expired 2 years ago. No permanent address. No formal guardianship papers. Just a crumpled notarized note from a daughter who had not been seen in 18 months. The clerk typed something into the computer, made a phone call, then looked up at Beverly with an expression that was not unkind, but was very, very firm. "I am sorry, ma'am. Until we can verify your relationship to the patient, we can only allow supervised visits during regular visiting hours. 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. 2 hours a day, out of 24. That was what the system had decided Beverly deserved. She could hear Destiny through the glass, small, frightened, calling out the only word that mattered. "Grandma, Grandma, where are you?" Beverly stood on the other side of the ICU door. She pressed her palm flat against the glass. And through that glass, she could see Destiny in the bed, small and tangled in wires, reaching her hand out toward the door. Their palms were inches apart, separated by a 1/4 inch of hospital glass. One hand old and weathered, the other barely bigger than a playing card. That glass door became Beverly's entire world. And for the next 47 days, she never left the other side of it. Beverly's days had a rhythm. Not the rhythm of someone living, the rhythm of someone waiting. She woke at 5 every morning on that bench, same bench. Third one from the main entrance, the one partially covered by the awning so the rain only hit her legs instead of her whole body. She folded the donation blanket into a neat square and tucked it into her plastic bag. Then she smoothed her coat, fixed her hair with a comb she kept in her pocket, and walked 4 blocks to the subway station on Lexington Avenue, not to ride the train, to use the bathroom. She washed her face in the sink, changed her shirt from the plastic bag, brushed her teeth with a travel toothbrush she had gotten from the shelter. Months ago, the bristles worn flat, but still usable. She looked at herself in that scratched metal mirror and made sure she looked like someone who belonged somewhere. Because Beverly Williams refused to look like what she was. She did not want pity. She did not want attention. She wanted to be at that hospital door at 7 a.m. when visiting hours started. That was all. 7 a.m. The glass doors opened. Beverly walked in, signed the visitor log with steady hands, took the elevator to the 4th floor, and sat with Destiny for exactly 60 minutes. She combed Destiny's hair. She told her stories. She held up drawings that Destiny had made the day before, and taped new paper to the bed tray so Destiny could draw more. She checked the monitors, memorized the numbers, asked the nurse what medications had changed. At 8 a.m., a nurse would come in and say visiting hours are over. Beverly would kiss Destiny's forehead, tell her she would be back at 5 and walk out through the glass doors. Then she went back to the bench. For 9 hours, Beverly sat outside that hospital. She sat while ambulances screamed past her. She sat while taxicabs pulled up and parents rushed in, carrying stuffed animals and balloons and gift bags from toy stores. She sat while couples walked in holding hands, wearing clean clothes, smelling like coffee shops, carrying the confidence of people whose biggest problem today was that their child had a broken arm or a bad fever. Things that would heal. Things that had timelines. Beverly carried a composition notebook and a box of 24 crayons. That was her luggage. She wrote in the notebook between visits. She recorded everything. What the nurse said about Destiny's oxygen levels. What time the doctors did rounds. Whether Destiny ate breakfast. Whether she slept through the night. She gathered this information in fragments through brief conversations with nurses who were sometimes kind and sometimes too busy and sometimes annoyed that this woman kept asking questions she technically had no authorization to receive answers to. And when she was not writing, she knitted. She had found a ball of yellow yarn in a donation bin at the church 3 blocks away and a pair of knitting needles at a thrift store for 75 cents. She was making Destiny a scarf. Yellow because Destiny said yellow was the color of happy. Beverly's hands moved the needles in the cold, her fingers stiff and cracked the yarn, looping slowly into rows that grew an inch a day. In the United States, more than 2.5 million children experience homelessness every year. And in a growing number of those cases, the person holding the family together is not a parent, it is a grandparent. Nearly 2.7 million grandparents across the country are raising their grandchildren, many of them without legal custody, without financial support, without any formal recognition from the systems that are supposed to protect families. They fall into a gap that no one designed on purpose, but no one has fixed either. Too old for certain aid programs. Too informal to qualify for legal rights, too invisible to be counted in the ways that matter. Beverly was one of 2.7 million, and like most of them, she did not have a voice loud enough for anyone to hear. The security guard noticed her on day 3. His name was Terrence, 29 years old. Big shoulders, quiet voice, the kind of man who wore authority like an uncomfortable suit. He walked over on his first shift and told Beverly she could not loiter on hospital property. Beverly looked up at him. "I am waiting for visiting hours." "Visiting hours are not for 9 more hours, ma'am. You cannot sit here all day. I will be quiet. I will not bother anyone." Terrence hesitated. Then he walked away. The next day he told her the same thing, and the day after that. By the end of the first week he had stopped telling her to leave and started ignoring her, which Beverly understood was its own kind of permission. By the second week, something shifted. Terrence would walk past the bench on his rounds and glance at her. He noticed she was always in the same spot, never asked for money, never talked to anyone, never left except to use the bathroom and come back. She sat straight, kept her area clean, folded her blanket every morning. She was not behaving like someone who had nowhere to go. She was behaving like someone who had chosen exactly where to be. On day 15, Terrence walked past the bench at 6:30 a.m., 30 minutes before visiting hours. He did not look at Beverly. He set a paper cup of coffee on the far edge of the bench and kept walking. Beverly picked it up. It was hot, black, no sugar. She wrapped both hands around it and held it against her chest. Neither of them said a word. He brought coffee every morning after that. And every morning neither of them said a word about it. Some kindness does not need a conversation. It just needs a cup and the willingness to see someone who the rest of the world has decided not to look at. Now, to understand what happened next, you need to understand the man who found Beverly at 3 a.m. Because Dr. Marcus Calloway did not stop at that bench by accident. He stopped because something in that image broke through the wall he had been building around himself for years. Marcus Calloway was 38 years old. Pediatric ICU attending at Manhattan Children's Hospital, board certified, published, respected by his colleagues. The kind of doctor whose name appeared on the top of patient satisfaction surveys and at the bottom of research papers. On paper, he was everything a doctor should be. In reality, he was falling apart. He had not slept more than 4 hours a night in 3 months. His marriage was held together by logistics, not love. His wife, a corporate attorney, had stopped asking him when he was coming home because the answer was always later. They communicated through text messages about grocery lists and who was picking up their daughter from daycare. They slept in the same bed, but might as well have been in different buildings. Marcus did not become a doctor because he wanted to. He became a doctor because he promised. He grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood where the sirens were so constant they became background noise like crickets in the country. His mother had been an addict, crack cocaine. She left when Marcus was 4. Just gone one morning, the door opened, the apartment cold, a box of cereal spilled on the kitchen floor. Marcus remembered the cereal more than he remembered her face. His grandmother raised him, Ruth Calloway. Everyone in the neighborhood called her Miss Ruth. She worked 2 jobs. Daytime, she cleaned rooms at a Holiday Inn off the expressway. Nights, she did laundry at a nursing home. Her hands were always dry, always cracked, always smelling of bleach and fabric softener. She wore the same 3 church dresses in rotation and kept her Bible on the kitchen table like other people keep a salt shaker. Miss Ruth had a rule. One rule: you do your homework before you do anything else. She did not care about basketball, did not care about video games, did not care about what the other boys on the block were doing. You come home, you sit at this table, and you do your work. That is how you get out. That is how you become something. Marcus did his homework every single night at that kitchen table, and Miss Ruth sat across from him, folding laundry or reading her Bible, just being there. Not helping because she had only finished 8th grade and could not help with algebra, but being there, present, constant. The way grandmothers are when they have decided that a child will not fall through the cracks on their watch. Make something of yourself, she told him once, pressing his church shirt the night before a scholarship interview. Make something so you can help people who look like us. People nobody else is going to help. Marcus got the scholarship, then another one, then medical school, then residency, then fellowship, then a job at one of the best pediatric hospitals in the country. He made something of himself. Miss Ruth never saw it. She died of a heart attack on a Tuesday morning in Marcus's 2nd year of college. Collapsed in the laundry room of the nursing home where she worked nights. They found her on the floor between 2 washing machines, still holding a folded sheet. Marcus had carried that image for 16 years. The grandmother who gave him everything dying alone on a concrete floor in a building full of people who did not know her name. And now, at 3 a.m. on a frozen January night, Marcus had stepped outside because he could not sleep, because he had lost a 4-year-old patient named Elijah 6 days ago, because he was questioning whether any of this mattered, whether saving some children just to lose others was a career or a punishment. He stepped outside to breathe, and he saw a 71-year-old woman on a bench, same age as Miss Ruth when she died, same dark skin, same posture, sitting upright, even in exhaustion, back straight, chin level, the posture of a woman who had been taught that dignity was something you wore, not something you earned. His feet would not move. His brain said, walk past. His body said, stop. He stopped. And that is why Marcus Calloway sat down on that bench instead of walking past it. Not because he was a hero, not because he was extraordinarily kind, because he saw his grandmother and his body remembered what it felt like to be loved by someone who had nothing except the decision to show up. If you are already invested in Beverly's story, stay with me. Because what happens next between her and Dr. Calloway will change both of their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. Subscribe now so you do not miss a single moment. Marcus sat down on the bench next to Beverly, not standing over her, not crouching to her level like you would with a child. He sat beside her the way you sit next to someone you are choosing to be equal with. It was a small thing, but Beverly noticed. She had spent 47 days being looked down at, literally. People passed her on that bench, and their eyes went over her head or through her body like she was furniture. The doctors, the nurses, the visitors, the delivery drivers, even the other homeless people who sometimes drifted by. Everyone looked past her or down at her. This man sat next to her. I am one of her doctors, Marcus said. Room 412. Destiny Williams. Beverly's whole body changed. Her shoulders came forward. Her hands tightened on the notebook. Her eyes, which had been guarded and still, suddenly flooded with everything she had been holding back for 47 days. Is she okay? Is she worse? They changed her medication on Tuesday. The new one. Is it working? She has been coughing more at night. I can hear it sometimes from outside when the windows are cracked. Is that the infection? Or the fluid? Marcus stared at her. This woman, on a bench, in 28-degree weather, was asking clinical questions. Specific, informed, detailed. Questions that some parents who sat in the ICU family lounge all day never thought to ask. How do you know about the medication change? I asked the nurses. During visiting hours, some of them tell me things, some of them do not. I write it all down. She held up the notebook. Marcus had already seen it. But now, under the yellow glow of the hospital's exterior lights, Beverly opened it to a random page and handed it to him. He read, Day 34. Temperature 99.1, down from yesterday. Nurse with the braids said the echo showed slight improvement. Destiny ate half a cup of applesauce and 2 bites of toast. She asked about her mother. I told her Mama is getting better. I do not know if that is true, but she does not need to carry that right now. She drew a picture of a butterfly with orange wings. I taped it to the window so she could see it from her bed. Marcus turned the page. Day 38. Oxygen dropped to 92 during the night. They increased the flow. She was scared. The nurse told me this morning that Destiny cried for an hour at 2 a.m. and would not let anyone touch her. She only wanted her grandmother. They could not reach me because I am not in the system. I was outside, 20 feet away. I could not get to her. Marcus closed the notebook. He did not close it because he was done reading. He closed it because his hands were shaking and he did not want Beverly to see. He had read thousands of medical charts. He had written hundreds of progress notes. Clinical, efficient, precise, patient-tolerating feeds, vitals stable, plan to wean ventilator support. But he had never read anything like this notebook. Because this was not a medical chart. This was a grandmother's love translated into data. Every temperature reading was an act of vigilance. Every medication note was a refusal to be left out. Every small detail, the applesauce, the butterfly drawing, the crying at 2 a.m., was proof that someone on the other side of a glass door was paying closer attention than anyone inside it. You have been out here for 47 days, Marcus said. His voice was quiet in a way that had nothing to do with volume. She is all I have, Beverly said, and I am all she has. Marcus looked at the hospital. 4 stories up behind a window he could not see from this angle, a 6-year-old girl was sleeping alone in a room full of machines, and her grandmother was sitting right here. My grandmother raised me too, Marcus said. Beverly looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time in 47 days, someone was not talking to her like a problem. Someone was talking to her like a person. What was her name? Ruth. Miss Ruth. She sounds like a good woman. She was the best woman I ever knew. They sat in silence for a moment. The kind of silence that is not empty but full, the kind that happens when 2 people recognize something in each other that does not need to be explained. Then Marcus stood up. Come with me, he said. Beverly looked at him, confused, cautious. She had learned that when people in authority say follow me, it usually means you are about to be told no in a different room. Where room? 412. It is 3:30 in the morning. Visiting hours do not start until 7. I know, Marcus said. Come with me anyway. What Dr. Calloway did next broke every rule in that hospital, and it started a chain of events that no one, not the administrators, not the lawyers, not even Beverly herself, could have predicted. Marcus swiped his badge at the ICU entrance. The lock clicked, the heavy door swung open, and Beverly Williams walked into the pediatric intensive care unit for the first time in 47 days outside of visiting hours. The unit was quiet, that particular 3 a.m. quiet that only hospitals have, where the fluorescent lights hum and the monitors beep in slow rhythms and the hallway feels like it is holding its breath. 2 nurses sat at the central station. One looked up, saw Dr. Calloway, saw the old woman beside him, and opened her mouth to say something. Marcus shook his head. Just slightly. The nurse closed her mouth. They walked to room 412. Marcus opened the door slowly. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of monitors and a small nightlight shaped like a moon that one of the nurses had brought from home because Destiny was afraid of the dark. Destiny was asleep. Small and still under a white hospital blanket, her braids fanned out on the pillow, her chest rising and falling in time with the ventilator's rhythm. Wires ran from her chest to machines. An IV line snaked from her left hand. She looked fragile in the way that only sick children look fragile, as if the weight of the sheets might be too much. Beverly stopped in the doorway. She did not rush in. She stood there, one hand gripping the doorframe, and just looked at her granddaughter. Not through glass, not from a bench 4 stories below. She looked at Destiny the way you look at something you thought you might never see again up close. Then she walked to the bed. She sat in the chair beside it, and she reached out and took Destiny's hand. It was the first time she had touched her granddaughter in 47 days without a sheet of glass between them. Beverly's hand, rough and cold and cracked from weeks of sleeping outside, wrapped around Destiny's small, warm, IV-bruised fingers. Beverly did not cry. She did not make a sound. She just held that hand and closed her eyes and began to hum, low, barely audible, a melody that Marcus did not recognize, but that Destiny's body seemed to know. Because something changed on the monitors. Marcus saw it happen. The heart rate, which had been fluctuating between 95 and 115 for days, began to settle. It dropped to 88, then 84, then held steady at 82. The most stable reading the child had shown in 47 days. There is research on this. Real published peer-reviewed research. Studies have shown that the presence of a familiar caregiver, particularly one with a strong emotional bond to the patient, can stabilize heart rate, lower cortisol levels, reduce agitation, and improve recovery outcomes in critically ill children. The body recognizes safety before the mind does. And Destiny's body recognized her grandmother's hand, her grandmother's voice, her grandmother's specific and irreplaceable presence. The machines knew what the system did not. This woman belonged here. Marcus stood in the doorway and watched. He did not interrupt. He did not check the monitors up close. He did not do anything medical at all. He just let a grandmother hold her granddaughter's hand in a dark room at 3:30 in the morning. He stood there for 15 minutes. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Nurse Patricia Goodwin, 55 years old, 31 years in pediatric nursing. She had seen everything. Every kind of parent, every kind of loss, every kind of miracle. She ran the night shift with precision and rules and an iron commitment to protocol that had earned her the respect of every doctor in the unit and the fear of every new resident. She looked past Marcus into room 412. She saw Beverly. She saw the hand-holding. She saw the monitors. She did not need Marcus to explain. She could read the numbers. She could see the heart rate. She could see that this child, who had been restless and unstable for weeks, was sleeping peacefully for the first time since admission. Patricia looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Patricia. Neither of them spoke. Patricia turned around and walked back to the nursing station. She did not raise her voice. She did not call security. She sat down, opened the patient chart, and noted the time. But the next morning, she filed a report. Because Patricia Goodwin followed the rules. That was who she was. And the rules said that an unverified visitor in the ICU at 3:30 a.m., regardless of the outcome, was an incident that required documentation. She did it without anger. She did it without malice. She did it because she believed that systems only work when people follow them. And she was not wrong about that. But she was not entirely right either. Because sometimes the system is the problem, and sometimes the people who break the rules are the only ones who see it. The call came at 7:15 a.m. Marcus had not slept. He was still in his scrubs from the night before, sitting in the break room with a cold cup of coffee, Kana living playing the image of Beverly holding Destiny's hand in that dark room, the heart monitor settling, the humming, the quiet. His phone buzzed. Conference room B. Now, he knew what it was about. He had known since Patricia walked away from that doorway without a word. He had known, and he had done it anyway. The conference room was small and windowless. 3 people were already seated when Marcus walked in. Richard Davenport, the hospital administrator, 58 years old, gray suit, reading glasses, perched on his nose, the kind of man who had spent his career making sure institutions ran smoothly and lawsuits did not happen. Karen Mitchell, head of legal, younger, sharper, a yellow legal pad already covered in notes. And Dr. Adais Okonkwo, chief of pediatrics, 62 years old, silver-haired, sitting at the far end of the table with her hands folded and her expression unreadable. Dr. Calloway Davenport began. At approximately 3:30 this morning, you used your employee badge to grant access to the pediatric ICU to an individual who is not listed as an authorized visitor, family member, or legal guardian of any patient on this floor. Is that correct? Yes, Marcus said. Karen leaned forward. The individual in question is Beverly Williams. She has no verified legal relationship to the patient in room 412. No current government-issued identification. No permanent address. She is, for all legal purposes, an unverified stranger. She is that child's grandmother, Marcus said. She has been raising her for 6 years. We have no documentation confirming that, Karen said. She has 47 days of documentation confirming that. Davenport removed his glasses and set them on the table. Dr. Calloway, you brought an unverified individual into a pediatric intensive care unit at 3:30 in the morning, without authorization, without security clearance, without informing the charge nurse. Do you understand the liability implications? I understand that a 6-year-old girl has been in that unit for 47 days without a single family visit outside of 2 restricted hours, Marcus said. I understand that her grandmother has been sleeping on a bench outside this hospital in January because our system will not let her through the door. And I understand that last night, when that woman held her granddaughter's hand for the first time in 47 days, that child's cardiac function improved more in 1 hour than it has in 3 weeks of our protocols. That is not a medical justification for a security breach, Karen said. It is a medical observation, Marcus replied. The room was quiet for a moment. Davenport looked at Karen. Karen looked at her legal pad. Neither of them looked at Dr. Okonkwo, who had not said a single word since Marcus walked in. There is a growing body of research, and this is not opinion, but peer-reviewed evidence published in journals that every doctor in this room has read, showing that family presence in pediatric ICUs improves outcomes. Lower rates of delirium, reduced length of stay, better cardiac stability, fewer complications. Hospitals across the country are moving toward open visitation models in their pediatric units because the data is clear. Keeping families out does not protect patients. It harms them. Marcus knew this. He had read the studies. He had cited them in grand rounds presentations. But knowing something in an academic context and acting on it at 3:30 in the morning with your career on the line are 2 very different things. Davenport spoke again. Dr. Calloway, regardless of the clinical outcome, you violated hospital policy. This will be formally documented. You will receive a written reprimand. And any further unauthorized visitor access will result in suspension of your privileges. Is that clear? Yes, Marcus said. It is clear. The meeting appeared to be over. Davenport reached for his glasses. Karen closed her legal pad, and then Dr. Okonkwo spoke for the first time. The child's cardiac function improved 12% overnight. Her voice was calm and precise. First measurable improvement in 3 weeks. I reviewed the chart this morning. I would like to know what changed. No one answered. Dr. Okonkwo looked at Marcus, then at Davenport, then at Karen. I would like to know. She repeated what changed, and she let the silence sit there. Heavy. Unanswered. A question that none of them could address without admitting something the institution was not ready to admit. That a grandmother on a bench might have done more for that child in 1 hour than 47 days of restricted visiting policy had accomplished. The consequences did not stop with Marcus. They rolled downhill the way consequences always do in systems designed to protect themselves, and they landed on the person who had the least power to absorb them. Beverly was sitting on her bench at 8:45 a.m. when a hospital security officer approached her. Not Terrence, A different guard. Older. Official clipboard. He asked for her visitor badge. Beverly unclipped it from her coat and handed it over. She had worn that badge every day for 47 days. It was laminated. It had her photo on it, taken the first day at the registration desk, her face tired but composed. It said, "Visitor and restricted and escort required." It was not much, but it was the only proof she had that the system acknowledged she existed in relation to Destiny at all. The guard took the badge and told Beverly that her visitor privileges had been suspended pending an administrative review. She was not to enter the hospital until further notice. Beverly sat very still. "When can I see my granddaughter?" "That will be determined by the administration, ma'am." He walked away. Beverly watched him go. She did not call after him. She did not argue. She had learned a long time ago that arguing with people holding clipboards never changed the answer. It just made them write something down about you. 3 days later, the letter came. It was addressed to Beverly Williams' care of Manhattan Children's Hospital, which was the only address anyone had for her. A nurse who had grown fond of Beverly brought it outside and handed it to her quietly. The letter was from the New York City Department of Human Services. It was printed on official letterhead, dense with legal language, paragraphs that ran long and used words Beverly recognized individually, but not in the combinations they were arranged in. Adjudication, petition, custodial determination, welfare assessment. But she understood enough. She understood the phrase removal of custody. She understood the phrase foster care placement. She understood the phrase in the best interest of the child. DHS had opened a case. Someone somewhere in the chain of reports that followed the incident had flagged the situation. A 6-year-old child in a pediatric ICU. Primary caregiver is homeless. No legal guardianship. No stable housing. No income documentation. The system had done what systems do. It had identified a problem and activated a process. The process was designed to protect children. Beverly understood that. She did not blame the system for existing. She blamed it for not seeing what was right in front of it. Beverly sat on the bench. She held the letter in her left hand and the notebook in her right. The notebook with 47 pages of proof that she had not missed a single day. That she knew her granddaughter's temperature, her medications, her moods, her fears, her favorite color, the name of the nurse who sang to her at night. 47 pages that said, "I was here, I was, paying attention, I never left." The letter said none of that mattered without the right paperwork. Beverly folded the letter carefully. She put it in the inside pocket of her coat, the same pocket where she kept Destiny's spare hair ties and a small photograph of the two of them at a church picnic the summer before Destiny, on Beverly's lap, both of them laughing at something the camera did not capture. She did not cry. She had not cried in 47 days, and she was not going to start now. Crying was a luxury for people who had time to fall apart. Beverly did not have time. She had a granddaughter 4 floors above her who was sick and scared and alone, and now the state was considering taking that child away and putting her with strangers. Beverly looked at the notebook. She pressed her hand flat against its cover, the way she pressed her hand against the glass door of the ICU. "A child does not need to know she is poor," she said quietly. To no one, to herself, to Mama Lorraine, to the cold January air. She just needs to know she is loved. Beverly had survived poverty, grief addiction in her family, and homelessness. But nothing had prepared her for the possibility of losing the only person who still called her grandma. And she was about to fight back in a way that nobody expected from a 71-year-old woman sleeping on a bench. Marcus found out about the DHS letter on the same day Beverly received it. Patricia told him, not out of kindness, not exactly, but because Patricia was the kind of nurse who believed that doctors should know when their decisions had consequences beyond the operating room. "You should know," Patricia said, standing in the doorway of the call room where Marcus was pretending to review charts. "They are looking at taking the child. Foster care." Marcus set down his tablet. "What?" DHS opened a case. The grandmother has no legal guardianship, no housing, no income verification. They are considering placement. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had brought Beverly into that room. because it was the right thing to do. He had not considered that doing the right thing could trigger a chain of events that might separate Beverly and Destiny permanently. He thought about calling a lawyer. Then he realized he did not know any family law attorneys. He thought about calling the hospital social worker. Then he realized the hospital social worker was probably the one who had filed the report that triggered the DHS review in the first place. Then he thought about legal aid. The Legal Aid Society of New York City has existed for over 140 years. It is the oldest and largest provider of free legal services in the country. They handle more than 300,000 cases a year: housing disputes, immigration hearings, criminal defense, and family law. Custody battles for people who cannot afford a private attorney, which in New York City means most people. Marcus called them at 4 in the afternoon. By 5:30, he was on the phone with a woman named Denise Okafor. Denise was 34, a family law attorney. She had grown up in the foster care system herself, bounced between 6 homes before aging out at 18, put herself through college and law school on scholarships and sheer refusal to be defined by her circumstances. She specialized in kinship custody cases, grandparents raising grandchildren, aunts raising nieces, the informal family arrangements that hold communities together, but that the legal system treats as invisible. "Tell me about the grandmother," Denise said. Marcus told her everything. The bench, the 47 days, the notebook, the heart rate improvement, the DHS letter. Denise was quiet for a moment. "You said she kept a notebook every day for 47 days, medications, temperatures, behavioral observations. She recorded everything." "That notebook," Denise said, "slowly is the best evidence of caregiving I have ever heard described in a custody case. Most of my clients are lucky if they can produce a school enrollment form. This woman built a medical log from the outside of a building." They met the next day. Marcus, Denise, and Beverly sitting on that same bench because Beverly had nowhere else to go, and Denise was not the kind of lawyer who needed a conference room to do her job. Denise looked through the notebook, page by page. She asked Beverly questions. Not legal questions. Human questions. Who enrolled Destiny in school, Beverly? Who took her to the doctor for checkups, Beverly? Who braided her hair and packed her lunch and walked her to the bus stop every morning, Beverly? Who sat with her when she had nightmares, Beverly? Who knew that Destiny's favorite color was yellow and her favorite food was applesauce, and she was afraid of the dark, Beverly? Here is what most people do not understand about guardianship in America. Millions of grandparents are raising their grandchildren. About 2.7 million of them, according to the Census Bureau. But the majority of these arrangements are informal. No court order. No legal paperwork. Just a grandmother who stepped in when a parent could not. And because there is no legal documentation, these grandparents exist in a gray zone. They cannot make medical decisions. They cannot enroll children in school without jumping through bureaucratic hoops. They cannot sign permission slips or access school records or authorize emergency treatment. And when the state comes looking, they have no legal standing to say this child is mine. Beverly had raised Destiny for 6 years without a single piece of official paper confirming what everyone in her life already knew. Denise began building the case. She pulled Destiny's school records from PS 47 in Baltimore, where Beverly had enrolled her. Attendance records showing Beverly signed Destiny in and out every day. Emergency contact forms listing Beverly as primary guardian. A letter from Destiny's first-grade teacher saying that Miss Williams is the most involved and dedicated caregiver I have encountered in 12 years of teaching. She pulled medical records, every well child visit, every vaccination, every sick visit, Beverly's name on every form, Beverly's signature on every consent. She gathered character references. Destiny's Sunday school teacher, the pastor at Mount Zion Baptist Church where Beverly volunteered in the food pantry. 2 neighbors from the shelter who wrote letters saying Beverly was the most devoted grandmother they had ever seen. A former colleague from Garrison Elementary who had known Beverly for 28 years and described her as the kind of woman who never stopped showing up for children. And then Shanice appeared. Not in person, by phone. DHS had contacted her as the biological parent, as they were legally required to do. Shanice was in a residential treatment facility in upstate New York. 6 months into a 12-month program. She was sober. She was trying. But she was not ready, and she knew it. Denise spoke with Shanice for 45 minutes. It was a difficult conversation. Shanice loved her daughter. She said that. She said it 3 times. But she also said the truest thing she had ever said. My mama is Destiny's mother. I gave birth to her, but my mama raised her. I am not in a place to take care of anyone right now. I just want Destiny to be safe, and she is safest with my mama. Shanice's statement was helpful, but her existence also complicated the case, because legally, a biological parent's rights take precedence over a grandparent's, even an absent parent, even an addicted parent. The court would have to consider Shanice's status before granting Beverly formal guardianship. It added time. It added hearings. It added layers. And time was something they did not have. Because while Denise was building the legal case and Marcus was gathering medical evidence and Beverly was sitting on a bench waiting for permission to see her own granddaughter, Destiny was getting worse. Dr. Okonkwo called Marcus into her office on a Tuesday afternoon. She closed the door. She did not sit down. Neither did he. The echocardiogram from this morning shows significant decline, she said. Ejection fraction has dropped to 22%. We are running out of options with medication alone. Marcus felt his chest tighten. 22%. A healthy heart pumps at 55 to 70%. 22 meant the heart was barely functioning. What are you recommending? Ventricular assist device. Temporary mechanical support. We give the heart time to rest and recover. If it responds, we can wean her off the device. If it does not, she goes on the transplant list. A VAD, a ventricular assist device, a machine that essentially takes over the pumping function of the heart while the damaged muscle tries to heal. In children, the procedure carries risk: bleeding, infection, stroke. But in Destiny's case, the risk of not doing it was worse, when Marcus asked. Within 48 hours. Sooner, if she declines further. But there is a problem. Marcus already knew the problem. We need informed consent from a legal guardian. Beverly is not legally recognized yet, and Shanice is in treatment upstate. Can we reach Shanice by phone? We tried. The facility has restrictions on outgoing communication. Her counselor says she may be available Thursday, but Thursday might be too late. This is where the law and medicine collide in the ugliest possible way. A child is dying. A procedure exists that could save her. A grandmother is sitting 20 feet away who would sign any paper, agree to any risk, do anything to save that child's life. But the law does not recognize her hand as the hand that can hold the pen. An emergency guardianship order. That was the option Dr. Okonkwo laid out. In the state of New York, when a child requires urgent medical intervention and no authorized guardian is available to consent, a court can grant temporary emergency guardianship. The process is designed to move fast, 24 to 72 hours. A judge reviews, the evidence determines that the child's welfare is at immediate risk, and grants a temporary order allowing a designated adult to make medical decisions. But even fast in legal terms means paperwork and hearings and documentation, and Destiny's heart was not operating on legal timelines. Marcus walked outside. He found Beverly on the bench. She was knitting. The yellow scarf was almost finished, now long enough to wrap twice around a small neck. He sat down next to her. Destiny needs a procedure, he said, a device to help her heart. Beverly's hands stopped moving. When soon? Maybe tomorrow. Maybe the next day. What kind of procedure? Marcus explained it in simple terms. A small machine. It would help pump blood while Destiny's heart rested. It was not a transplant. It was a bridge. A way to buy time. Beverly listened. She did not interrupt. When he finished, she asked the question she already knew the answer to. They need me to sign for it. Yes, and they will not let me. Not yet. We are working on it. There is a court process. Emergency guardianship. It can happen quickly. Beverly looked up at the hospital. 4 floors. Room 412. Somewhere behind that glass, her granddaughter's heart was failing. She set down the knitting needles. She stood up. She walked to the ICU entrance. The glass door was locked, as always. Beverly pressed her palm flat against it. The same gesture, the same glass, the same hand. But this time, Destiny was not pressing back from the other side. Destiny was in a bed connected to machines, her small heart struggling to do the one job it was designed to do. Beverly stood there with her hand on the glass and spoke to a granddaughter who could not hear her. "Hold on, baby. Grandma is coming. I just need them to let me in." The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning. Emergency session, family court, downtown Manhattan. Denise had filed the petition at 6 p.m., and the court had expedited it because a child's life was on the line and the clock was not waiting for anyone. Beverly arrived at 8:15. She was wearing the best clothes she had, a pair of black slacks that she had kept folded at the bottom of her plastic bag for months, creased from storage but clean, a white button-down shirt that the shelter manager had lent her that morning when Beverly explained where she was going. The shirt was slightly too big. Beverly had rolled the cuffs twice to keep them from covering her hands. She had combed her hair and pinned it back. She had cleaned her shoes with a wet paper towel in the subway bathroom. She looked like what she was, a 71-year-old woman who had spent 47 nights on a bench and was now standing in a courthouse trying to prove she deserved to take care of the child she had already been taking care of for 6 years. The courtroom was small, not like the courtrooms on television. No jury box, no gallery full of spectators. Just a judge's bench, 2 tables, a court reporter, and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly unwell. Denise sat at one table with Beverly. At the other table sat the DHS attorney, a man named Gerald Watkins, mid-40s organized professional doing his job. Not a villain, just a man with a file and a legal obligation to argue that Beverly Williams did not meet the state's criteria for custodial fitness. Judge Vivian Harper entered. 60 years old, silver reading glasses. She moved with the efficient calm of someone who had seen thousands of these cases and understood that behind every file number was a family being pulled apart. "Counselor," the judge said to Denise. "Present your petition." Denise stood. She was precise and focused the way lawyers are when they know the evidence is strong but the stakes are too high for confidence. "Your Honor, my client Beverly Williams is petitioning for emergency temporary guardianship of her granddaughter Destiny Williams, age 6, currently in the pediatric ICU at Manhattan Children's Hospital. Destiny requires an urgent medical procedure, a ventricular assist device implantation. Without a legal guardian's consent, the hospital cannot proceed. Destiny's biological mother, Shanice Williams, is currently in a residential treatment facility and cannot be reached in the required timeframe. Miss Beverly Williams has been Destiny's primary and sole caregiver for 6 years. Denise placed the notebook on the table. This is a 47-day record of Miss Williams's daily documentation of her granddaughter's medical condition, written from outside the hospital, where Miss Williams was denied entry due to lack of formal identification and housing. I also submit school enrollment records, medical visit records, character references from educators, clergy, and community members, and a written statement from Destiny's biological mother confirming Miss T.F.T.H. Williams as primary caregiver." Gerald Watkins stood. "Your Honor, DHS acknowledges Miss Williams's involvement in the child's life. However, the petitioner is currently without stable housing, without verifiable income, and without any prior legal recognition of guardianship. The department's concern is whether the petitioner can provide adequate long-term care given her current circumstances." Denise responded, "Your Honor, we are not asking for permanent custody today. We are asking for emergency temporary guardianship so that this grandmother can authorize a procedure that may save her granddaughter's life. The question before this court is not whether Miss Williams has a house. It is whether she has been this child's parent in every meaningful sense of the word." Judge Harper looked at the notebook. She picked it up. She opened it to the first page and began reading. The courtroom went quiet. Not the uncomfortable silence of waiting, the heavy silence of something being weighed. Beverly watched the judge turn the pages. Page after page, 47 of them. Each one written in Beverly's shaking hand. Each one a day she showed up when the system told her she did not belong. The judge paused on a page. She read it again. Then she looked up. "Miss Williams, would you like to address the court?" Denise leaned toward Beverly and whispered that she did not have to speak, that the evidence was strong, that sometimes it was better to let the paperwork talk. Beverly stood up anyway. She did not have a speech. She did not have notes. She had her hands folded in front of her, and her voice, which was steady, in the way that only comes from having nothing left to lose except the one thing that matters. "Your Honor, I do not have a house. I do not have a car. I do not have insurance. But I have 47 days of sitting outside that hospital because I could not leave her alone in there. I have 6 years of making sure she ate before I ate, slept before I slept, smiled before I worried about anything else. I do not know the legal words for what I am to that child, but destiny knows. She calls me Grandma, and Grandma never leaves." She paused, not for effect, because she was trying not to let her voice break. "My granddaughter is upstairs in that hospital right now, and her heart is giving out, and the doctors need someone to say, 'Yes, go ahead, save her.' I am that someone. I have always been that someone. I am just asking you to let me be that someone on paper too." Beverly sat down. Judge Harper removed her glasses. She set them on the bench. She looked at Beverly for a long moment. Then she looked at the notebook one more time. "This court grants emergency temporary guardianship of Destiny Williams to Beverly Williams, ineffective immediately. Miss Williams is authorized to make medical decisions on behalf of the minor child. A full custody hearing will be scheduled within 30 days. She paused. "Miss Williams, get to that hospital." Beverly did not shout. She did not cry. She did not collapse into relief the way people do in movies. She looked at the judge and said 2 words, "Thank you." Then she turned to Denise and asked the only question that mattered. "Can I go to her now? She does not like being alone at night." They gave Beverly the consent form in a small room on the 4th floor. Marcus was there. Dr. Okonkwo was there. A surgical nurse stood by with a clipboard ready to move the moment the signature was on the page. Beverly sat at the table. The form was 2 pages long, printed in small type, full of words like ventricular anticoagulation thromboembolism, words that described what could go wrong, words that belonged to a world Beverly had never been trained to navigate. But at the bottom of the 2nd page, there was a line, and next to that line it said Guardian Signature. Beverly picked up the pen. Her hand was trembling, not from fear, from the weight of what that signature meant. For 47 days she had been no one. Unverified, unauthorized, a woman on a bench. And now with one stroke of a pen she was Destiny's legal protector, the person the system finally recognized as the person Destiny had always known her to be. She signed. The letters were uneven. The B leaned too far to the right. The W trailed off at the end. It was not a clean signature. Beverly pressed her lips to the paper, just for a moment. Then she looked up at Marcus. "You take care of her," she said. "And then you bring her back to me." A ventricular assist device is a mechanical pump. It does not replace the heart. It helps it. Think of it as a partner that takes over the heavy lifting while the damaged muscle rests and tries to heal. In children, the device is smaller, more delicate, implanted through surgery that requires opening the chest. The success rate in pediatric patients is roughly 60 to 70%. Good odds, but not certainties. Not when the patient is 6 years old and weighs 41 pounds, and her heart has been struggling for almost 2 months. Destiny went into surgery at 4:17 p.m. They wheeled her down the hallway on a gurney that looked enormous compared to her small body. Beverly walked beside her, holding her hand until they reached the double doors of the operating suite. "This is as far as you can go," a nurse said gently. Beverly knelt down next to the gurney. She pressed her forehead against Destiny's forehead. She whispered something that only the two of them heard. Then she stood up and let them take her granddaughter through those doors. For the first time in 47 days, Beverly was inside the hospital legally. She sat in the surgical waiting room. A real room, with chairs and a television and a coffee machine and a window that looked out onto the parking lot instead of looking up at the building from a bench below. She sat in that room the way she had sat on the bench, upright, still, hands in her lap, except now she held the notebook. The surgery lasted 6 hours. Marcus came out twice to update her, the first time 2 hours in. The device is being positioned. Everything is going as planned. The second time 4 hours in. The heart is responding well to the support. We are closing up soon. At 9:30 p.m., Terrence appeared in the doorway of the waiting room. He was off duty. He was wearing street clothes. He held a paper bag with a sandwich and a cup of coffee. He set them on the chair next to Beverly. Beverly looked at him. "I am sorry I used to chase you away," Terrence said. "I did not know." Beverly picked up the coffee, held it in both hands the way she always did. "You were doing your job," she said. "I was doing mine." Terrence nodded. He stood there for a moment. Then he turned and left without another word. At 10:41 p.m., Marcus came through the door a third time. He was still in his surgical gown. His eyes were tired, but he was smiling. "She is out. The device is working. Her numbers are already improving. She is going to recovery now. You can see her in about an hour." Beverly opened the notebook to page 48. A blank page. She picked up her pen, and she wrote, "Day 48. Surgery is done. They say she is going to be okay. I am inside the hospital. I am going to hold her hand tonight. She does not have to be alone anymore." She closed the notebook. She held it against her chest. And for the first time in 47 days, Beverly Williams cried. Not the quiet tears of someone holding it together. Not the polite tears of relief. These were the deep, shaking, whole-body sobs of a woman who had carried an impossible weight across an impossible distance and had finally been allowed to set it down. Destiny woke up 12 hours later. The room was quiet. Morning light came through the window. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. The ventilator had been adjusted. She was breathing more on her own now, the device in her chest, doing the work her heart could not yet do alone. Beverly was in the chair beside the bed. She had not moved. She had not slept. She was holding Destiny's hand the same way she had held it that first night Marcus brought her in. The same steady grip. The same stillness. Destiny's eyes opened. Slowly. Blinking against the light. Confused the way children are when they wake up in hospitals surrounded by machines, uncertain of where the dream ended and the waking began. She turned her head. She saw Beverly. Her eyes went wide. "Grandma, I am here, baby. You are inside, I am inside. I am right here." Destiny's fingers tightened around Beverly's hand. Her bottom lip trembled. Not from pain, from something bigger than pain. "You did not leave. I never left. I was right outside the whole time." And then Destiny said something that Beverly was not expecting. Something that changed the weight of every single one of those 47 days. "I know," Destiny whispered. "I could see you from the window. Every day." Beverly's breath caught. She stared at her granddaughter. "What?" "The window in my room. It faces the front of the hospital. I could see the bench. I could see you sitting there. Every morning when I woke up, I looked out the window and you were there. And every night, before I fell asleep, I looked and you were still there." Beverly's hand was shaking. "Destiny, why did you never tell the nurses? Why did you not ask them to let me in?" Destiny's voice was barely audible. "Because I was scared that if I told them they would make you go away. They would move you somewhere I could not see you. And I needed to see you, Grandma. Even if I could not touch you. I needed to know you were there." A 6-year-old girl had been protecting her grandmother the same way her grandmother had been protecting her. From opposite sides of a window. One keeping watch from a bench below. The other keeping watch from a bed above. Both holding on to the only thing they had left, which was the knowledge that the other one was still there. Still close, still refusing to leave. Beverly pulled Destiny's hand to her lips and held it there. She did not speak. There was nothing left to say that had not already been said through 47 days of silence, 47 pages of notes, and 47 nights of choosing not to leave. What happened next inside that hospital was not a miracle. It was not a fairy tale ending brought about by a wealthy stranger or a sudden windfall of cash. It was something slower, quieter, and in many ways more meaningful. It was a policy change. Dr. Okonkwo brought the data to the medical board 2 weeks after Destiny's surgery. She did not make an emotional argument. She made a clinical one. She presented Destiny's case numbers, the 47 days of restricted visiting, the stagnant cardiac function during that period. Then the night Beverly was present. 12% improvement in ejection fraction, stabilized heart rate, reduced agitation, improved sleep patterns, and after Beverly was granted legal access and remained at bedside, continued steady improvement, leading to successful device implantation and early signs of cardiac recovery. One patient, Dr. Okonkwo, told the board, "One case. I am not claiming this is a clinical trial, but I am asking you to look at what we already know from the research and tell me why we are not acting on it." She cited the studies, published peer-reviewed in journals that every member of that board had read at some point in their careers. Research from institutions across the country showing that unrestricted family presence in pediatric ICUs leads to better clinical outcomes, lower rates of delirium, shorter hospital stays, reduced medication needs, improved patient satisfaction, lower parental anxiety, which in turn reduces cortisol exposure for the child. The major pediatric hospitals that had already moved to open visitation models were seeing the results, not in theory, in practice, in real numbers, in real children who recovered faster because the people who loved them most were allowed to be in the room. Our current policy, Dr. Okonkwo said, treats family as a disruption. The evidence says family is a treatment. Marcus presented his report next. He had titled it, "The Case for Family-Centered ICU Care," and he had spent 2 weeks writing it not as a defense of what he had done that night, but as a proposal for what the hospital should do going forward. He documented Beverly's case without using her name. He cited the research. He proposed a pilot program. The model was straightforward. Any patient in the pediatric ICU could have one identified primary caregiver granted 24-hour access, not based on insurance, not based on housing status, not based on whether the person had a government-issued ID or a formal custody document, based on one thing. Can you verify that this person is part of this child's life? The verification could come from school records, medical records, a social worker's assessment, even testimony from the patient if the child was old enough to speak. The point was to remove the barriers that kept people like Beverly on the wrong side of a glass door while their children lay alone in beds 4 stories up. The board debated. Some were supportive, some were cautious. Legal raised concerns about liability. Administration raised concerns about logistics. How do you manage infection control with around-the-clock visitors? What about security? What about the other patients? And then, Nurse Patricia Goodwin stood up. Nobody had expected that. Patricia was the one who had filed the report. Patricia was the one who had followed the rules. Patricia was the embodiment of protocol, the living reminder that systems exist for a reason. "I filed that incident report," Patricia said, "and I would file it again, because rules matter. But I also stood in that doorway and watched a child's heart rate stabilize the moment her grandmother touched her hand. I have been a nurse for 31 years, and I have never seen a medication do what that woman's presence did in 15 minutes. She paused. I followed the rules. But the rules were not designed for people like Beverly Williams. And if we are not willing to change rules that harm the people they are supposed to protect, then we are not a hospital. We are just a building." The room was quiet. The board approved the pilot program 6 weeks later. Manhattan Children's Hospital became one of the first in the state to implement a caregiver access policy that did not require proof of insurance, proof of housing, or formal legal documentation. It required proof of relationship, proof that someone cared enough to show up. The medical community began to take notice. Not because of one viral story or one billionaire's donation, but because the data supported what Beverly Williams had demonstrated with nothing but a notebook and a bench. That love is not a luxury in medicine. It is an intervention. And the people we exclude from the healing process are often the ones the patient needs most. 4 months after the surgery, they removed the device. Destiny's heart had healed enough to pump on its own. Not perfectly. She would need checkups for years, medication, monitoring, but the muscle was working. The blood was flowing. The 6-year-old girl who had almost died in a hospital bed while her grandmother sat on a bench outside was going to live. Denise completed the permanent guardianship, filing 3 weeks after the emergency order. The full hearing took less than 40 minutes. Judge Harper reviewed the case, noted that DHS had withdrawn its petition for foster placement after Beverly secured stable housing and granted permanent legal guardianship of Destiny Williams to Beverly Williams. Beverly walked out of that courtroom, holding a piece of paper that said what Destiny had known her entire life, that this woman was her family, that this woman had the right to make decisions for her, that this woman belonged. The apartment came through a Section 8 housing voucher. Denise's office had connected Beverly with a social worker who specialized in grandfamily cases, and that social worker had navigated the waiting list, the paperwork, the inspections, the bureaucratic maze that stands between a homeless person and a front door key. It was a 1-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor of a brick building in Jamaica, Queens. Small. The kitchen had a window that faced a parking lot. The bathroom tile was cracked in one corner. The hallway was narrow enough that Beverly could touch both walls if she stretched out her arms. It was the most beautiful place Beverly had ever seen. She moved in on a Saturday. She did not have much to move. The rolling suitcase with the broken wheel, the plastic bags, the box of crayons, the knitting needles, and the finished yellow scarf. And the notebook. Beverly made the bed first. She smoothed the sheets tight the way Mama Lorraine had taught her. Hospital corners, pillowcase tucked clean. She placed the box of crayons on the small desk by the window next to a stack of drawing paper she had bought at a dollar store with the first money she did not need for food. Then, she took the notebook to a framing shop 2 blocks away. She asked the man to frame it open to page 47. He looked at the page, looked at Beverly, and did not charge her. She hung it on the wall above the kitchen table. The handwriting was shaky. The ink was smeared in places from rain. But the words were clear. Day 47. They let me in today. I held her hand. She is going to be okay. We are going to be okay. Destiny came home from the hospital on a Wednesday. She walked through the front door slowly, still weak, still careful, her chest sore from the surgery scar that was fading but not gone. She looked around the apartment. She touched the wall. She looked at the kitchen. She looked at the bedroom. She looked at the crayons on the desk. Are we home, Grandma? We are home, baby. Beverly did not become wealthy. There was no surprise inheritance. No lottery ticket. No billionaire stepping in with a check. She lived on $1,400 a month from Social Security. Destiny was covered by Medicaid. The rent was subsidized. The groceries came from careful budgeting and the food pantry at Mount Zion Baptist, where Beverly had started volunteering again. It was not a fairy tale. It was a Tuesday, but it was theirs. 1 year after the night he found Beverly on that bench, Marcus Calloway stood in the lobby of Manhattan Children's Hospital next to a new sign. It was small, tasteful, mounted on the wall beside the information desk. The Ruth Calloway Family Bridge Program, connecting families to housing, legal aid, and social services. Because no one should have to choose between being with their child and having a place to sleep. He had named it after his grandmother, the woman who worked 2 jobs and died on a laundry room floor and never got to see what her grandson became. Marcus had spent 16 years carrying the guilt of not being there when Miss Ruth collapsed. He had spent 16 years trying to make something of himself the way she asked. And for the first time standing in that lobby, looking at her name on a wall, in a hospital where families would be helped because of what she taught him, he felt like he had actually done it. The program was simple. When a child was admitted to the pediatric ICU and the family was identified as housing insecure or lacking legal documentation of guardianship, a social worker from the Family Bridge team would intervene immediately. Not after discharge, not after the crisis, during it. They connected families with emergency housing, with legal aid attorneys who could file guardianship petitions, with food assistance and transportation vouchers, and the 100 small things that fall apart when you are spending every hour of every day trying to keep a child alive. Marcus ran the program alongside his clinical duties. It was more work. It was always more work. But it was the kind of work that made the rest of it bearable. Every time he lost a patient, every time the machines won and the body did not, he could walk into that lobby and see his grandmother's name and remember why he stayed. Beverly was the program's first volunteer. She came to the hospital every Tuesday and Thursday. Not to the ICU, to the lobby. She sat in a chair near the entrance with a cup of coffee and a composition notebook, and she waited for the people the system was about to overlook. She could spot them instantly. The grandmother in the hallway, who looked like she had been sleeping in her car. The grandfather pacing outside the ICU door at 2 in the morning. The aunt who had driven 4 hours and did not know how to ask for a visitor badge. Beverly saw them because she had been them. She would walk over, sit beside them, and say the same thing Marcus had said to her on that bench a year ago. "I know how this feels. Let me help." She showed them how to talk to the nurses, how to ask for the social worker, how to keep a notebook because documenting your child's condition gives you something to hold on to when everything else is falling apart. She connected them with Denise at Legal Aid. She told them about Section 8 and Medicaid and the grand family support programs that most people had never heard of. And sometimes when a grandmother was sitting outside a hospital at night because the system would not let her through the door, Beverly would sit beside her and say the words that Mama Lorraine had passed to her that she had carried through poverty and grief, and 47 nights on a bench. A child does not need to know she is poor. She just needs to know she is loved. And love means showing up every single day. Marcus watched Beverly work from across the lobby one afternoon. He watched her hand a notebook to an elderly man who had been sleeping in the waiting room for 3 nights. He watched her explain the visiting policy in simple terms. He watched her put her hand on the man's shoulder and say something that made him nod and sit up straighter. He thought about Miss Ruth, about the folded sheet they found in her hands, about the kitchen table where he did his homework every night, about the promise he made and the long, winding, painful road it took to keep it. Help people who look like us. People nobody else is going to help. He looked at Beverly across the lobby. She was laughing now, showing the old man something in her notebook. And Marcus felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt like his grandmother was proud. 3 years later. A classroom in Queens. 3rd grade. PS 112. Destiny Williams sat at her desk. She was 9 years old now. Taller. Stronger. The scar on her chest was hidden under her school uniform, but she sometimes touched it absent-mindedly, the way you touch something that reminds you of where you have been. She had her grandmother's wide smile and her mother's sharp cheekbones and a laugh that still sounded too big for her body, though her body was catching up. The teacher had given an assignment. Write about your hero. Most of the kids wrote about athletes or pop stars or characters from movies. One boy wrote about his father, who was a firefighter. One girl wrote about her older sister who had taught her to ride a bike. Destiny wrote about a notebook. My grandma did not have a house, but she had a notebook. She wrote about me every day for 47 days because she said if she could not hold my hand, she could at least hold my story. She sat outside the hospital every single day and every single night, even when it was cold, even when it rained, even when they told her to leave. She did not leave. She never left. She said that is what love does. It pays attention. My grandma is not famous. She is not on TV. She does not have a lot of money, but she is my hero, because when everybody said she could not be with me, she found a way to be with me anyway. She wrote it down so I would know. And I know. I always knew, because I could see her from the window. The teacher read it after class. She read it twice. Then she put it in an envelope and sent it home with a note that said, "This is the most beautiful thing a student has ever written in my classroom." Beverly read it at the kitchen table that night while Destiny was doing homework in the bedroom. She read it once. Then she held the paper against her chest, the way she used to hold the notebook against her chest on that bench. The same gesture. The same quiet weight of being seen by the one person whose eyes mattered most. Somewhere in a small apartment in Queens, a 74-year-old woman is making dinner for a 9-year-old girl. The notebook sits on the wall in a frame. Page 47 is open. The handwriting is shaky. The ink is smeared. But the words are there, the same words that carried them both through the longest 47 days of their lives. "They let me in today. I held her hand. She is going to be okay. We are going to be okay." Beverly Williams was never invisible. She was just standing somewhere the system was not designed to look. Now, before we go, I want to step outside the story for a moment and talk to you directly. This story is fictional. Beverly and Destiny and Marcus are characters I created. But the issues in this story are not fictional. They are painfully, urgently real. Myocarditis in children is a real condition. It can follow a common viral infection. It can be life-threatening, and it is one of the leading causes of sudden cardiac failure in otherwise healthy young people. The grand family crisis is real. Right now today, nearly 2.7 million grandparents in America are raising their grandchildren, many of them without legal custody, without financial support, without anyone in the system acknowledging that they are doing the hardest and most important job there is. The debate over ICU visiting policies is real. Hospitals across the country are still figuring out how to balance security and infection control with the growing evidence that family presence improves outcomes. Organizations like Generations United are fighting every day for grandfamilies to be recognized and supported. The Legal Aid Society provides free legal help to people who cannot afford an attorney. The National Alliance for Children's Grief supports families navigating loss and illness. These are real organizations doing real work. If this story moved you, look them up. I wrote this story because I keep thinking about all the Beverly Williamses out there right now. Grandmothers sleeping in cars on benches, in shelters just to stay close to the people they love. The system was not built for them, but they show up anyway. Every day, in the cold, in the rain, with nothing but a notebook and the stubborn, unbreakable belief that their grandchild should not have to be alone. If this story made you think about your own grandmother or about someone in your life who showed up for you when the world said they did not qualify, hold on to that. That is not just a memory. That is proof that love does not need paperwork. Thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. If it touched you, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another one. And do me a favor, leave a comment. Tell me about a time someone showed up for you when they did not have to. Or tell me about your grandmother. I read every single comment. And if you know a grandparent raising a grandchild right now, share this video with them. They need to know they are not alone. Until next time, take care of each other, especially the ones the system forgets. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is just to stay.
Welcome to the Story Channel. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few notes. The content in this video uses AI-generated images and voice narration, combined with the channel's creative editing. Everything is intended solely for entertainment purposes and does not depict or reflect any real events or real people. Hope you enjoy the story and have a great time watching.